Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today I'm going to be doing a Satellarknight deck profile. So I'm really excited to see you guys because this is actually suggested to me by one of my patrons, Jin. And this deck is an amazing rank 4 base deck that is really good at controlling the board because of the amount of traps that we play in this deck. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed card to the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron, along with test hands. And definitely give Jin some love down in the comments down below for suggesting such an awesome deck. Let's get straight on into this one, guys. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Satellarknight Deneb. This card is pretty much the Stratos of the deck because it has the ability, if this card is summoned, you can add a Tellarknight monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself, which is a really good effect to be able to add the exact monster that you need off this card's effect. We then play 3 copies of Satellarknight Altair. Altair is a really good normal summon in this deck because it has the ability that if this card is summoned, you get to target a Tellarknight monster in the graveyard, except another copy of itself, and special summon that monster in defense position, but monsters you control cannot attack for the rest of the turn, except for Tellarknight monsters, which is not that big of a deal because the majority of the time, all we're going to be attacking with anyways is our Tellarknight monsters. We then play 3 copies of Satellarknight Vega. Vega is a really good 3-of in this deck that has the ability that if this card is summoned, you get to special summon a Tellarknight monster from your hand, except another copy of itself, which is a really good effect to be able to get 2 monsters out on your side of the field, or get a copy of Altair, which then can bring back your copy of Deneb, which will then get you a search, which is really good, so you can go in some really powerful rank 4s, like Travere, which is a really great card to be able to summon off the 3 of these monsters. We then play just 2 copies of Satellarknight Anukulai. Anukulai is a good 2-of. This card is a walking Foolish Burial, which is really good to get the exact monster you need in the graveyard when you need it, which is really nice for this deck to be able to basically set up for Altair for some other plays in the deck. Now I go between 2 and 3 copies of this card. Usually it's either 3 copies of this and 2 copies of Vega, or 3 copies of Vega and 2 copies of this, but for right now I'm really liking the 2 copies of Anukulai, and it's just a really good 2-of in this deck. We then play 2 copies of Artifact Scythe. Artifact Scythe is a good 2-of in this deck because it's easy to set to your side of the field and then get rid of it with Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer to block your opponent out of the extra deck, which is a really powerful combo in this deck, especially with cards like Travere being able to bounce it back to your hand to use all over again, which is a really awesome thing for this card. We then play a single copy of Dasher and a single copy of Celestial. These are basically here so we can go into Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, which is a super powerful card in this deck to be able to summon to your side of the field, and also the effect of Celestial to be able to banish this card and another Destiny Hero monster from the graveyard to draw 2 cards, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, and when you have no cards in your hand, is just a really powerful effect to be able to get a draw 2 in this deck. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Monster Reborn, which is super helpful in this deck, especially with Deneb. Being able to get the effect of that card off again when you bring it back to your side of the field is just really nice. We play a single copy of Reinforcements of the Army because we only play warrior monsters in this deck, so this card is a really good card effect to be able to grab any of our Tellarknight monsters from the deck. The only card that you can't grab with this card is your Destiny Hero Dasher because it is a level 6 monster, and you can't grab your copies of Artifact Scythe because they are fairy monsters, but any of your Tellarknight monsters you can grab from the deck with this card, which is really good. We then play a single copy of Double or Nothing. Double or Nothing is amazing in this deck because being able to just summon out 2 Tellarknight monsters to your side of the field, Exile summon into Utopia Double, detach a material, summon Utopia to your side of the field on top of the copy of Utopia Double, grabbing this from deck, and the Utopia comes out at 5,000 attack points, then attacking the opponent, detaching a material to negate the effect, and then dropping Double or Nothing to boost that Utopia up to 10,000 attack points is absolutely insane in this deck. To be able to just OTK your opponent is really awesome, as long as they have a monster on their field that has 2,000 or less attack points. We then play a single copy of Satellarknight Skybridge. Skybridge is a good 1-of in the deck that has the ability to let you target a Tellarknight monster you control, and then special summon a Tellarknight monster with a different name from your deck, and if you do, shuffle the targeted monster into the deck, which is really good because it basically lets you trade your Tellarknight monsters out. I just play a single copy of this card. It does come in handy as a 1-of in the deck, but I don't usually use it all that much, so I just end up playing it as a 1-of. It also has the ability that while the monster is special summon this effect is face on the field, you cannot special summon monsters except for Tellarknight monsters, which is not that big of a deal because we can make XZ plays with just 2 monsters on the field, and you can summon a card like your Tellarknight Altair to your side of the field to be able to reborn back one from the graveyard to get a rank 4, which is really good. We then play 2 copies of Fusion Destiny. Fusion Destiny is so we can go into our Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer by sending Celestial and Dasher to the graveyard to go into that crazy powerful boss monster. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. Now, we play a lot of traps in this deck. So for the first traps we're going to be playing 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute is a really good 3-of in this deck because Torrential Tribute is just going to board wipe every single monster on the field, which is super good in this deck, especially with Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer being able to just bring itself back, which is really good. I love this card in this deck, and it helps out a lot to be able to just board wipe the field and then go into some really powerful monsters on the following turn. We then play 3 copies of Artifact Sanctum. Artifact Sanctum is really good in this deck to be able to bring out your copy of your Artifact Scythe to lock out your opponent out of the extra deck. This card is just really good as a 3-of, especially in this trap build of Tellarknights, because it has the ability to special summon out a copy of your Artifact monster from the deck. You can activate it during your opponent's turn to lock them out of the extra deck with Scythe, which is just really, really, really good. And if this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, then you can target a card on the field and destroy it, which is really a good effect if your opponent drops a Feather Duster against you. I really like that effect and helps out a lot. We then play 3 copies of Satellar Nova Alpha. This card is insane and is a crazy powerful counter trap that has the ability that when a spell or trap or monster effect is activated, you can send a face-up Tellarknight monster you control to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card, and then you get to draw a card. This card is great protection in the deck to basically lock down the opponent and ensure that you're always going to have a negate. It's really good, especially to get that draw off this card, and being able to just normal summon a Deneb to be able to search a monster from the deck is really good to set this card behind it, and then basically always have a counter trap locked and ready to go against the opponent. We then play 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment is a really good card. You can play Solemn Strike over it. It's totally up to you. I just really like the Solemn Judgment because it pretty much says no to everything, which is a really awesome thing for this card to be able to do. We then play 2 copies of Fiendish Chain. Fiendish Chain is really good in the deck as well because Fiendish Chain will let us activate this card by targeting an effect monster that your opponent controls and then negate that monster's effect while it's face-up on the field, and it also can't attack, which is a really good effect to be able to use, especially with Trevere, because all of the continuous trap cards in this deck can be bounced back to the hand with Trevere's effect and then be able to use again, which is really, really nice. We then play 2 copies of Crackdown. Crackdown is really good in the deck as well because you can activate this card by targeting a face-up monster your opponent controls and take control of that monster. And then while you control that monster, it cannot attack or activate its effects, but that's totally fine because you're basically just getting it out of the way to be able to use it to link summon or just get it out of the way so you can attack your opponent. But you can also bounce this card back to the hand with Trevere, which is a really good effect. We then play 3 copies of Oasis of Dragon Souls. You can play Call of the Haunted over this card, but I really like Oasis because Oasis has the ability that when you activate this card, you get to target a monster in the graveyard and special summon it in defense position, and it becomes a worm type monster. But the really good effect of this card is it does put the monster in defense position, which is really good compared to Call of the Haunted, because Call of the Haunted puts it in attack position, and with this playing Tellarknight monsters that have low attack points, you don't want to usually put them in attack position, so this card comes in very, very handy as a 3-of to be able to bring back cards like Deneb so you can get a search, Altair so you can get an additional monster reborn, Anukalai so you can send something to the graveyard, or Vega to be able to special summon a Tellarknight from the hand. You can also bring back Artifact Scythe with this card because it doesn't lock you into a level, which is really, really awesome. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Satellarknight Trevere. Trevere is a crazy crazy powerful boss monster for the deck that has the ability that during the turn you Xyz summon this card, you can't special summon monsters except Satellarknight monsters. And if this card is Xyz summoned, return all their cards on the field to the hand, and then once per turn, you can detach a material from this card to send a random card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. And if this card with Xyz materials is sent to the graveyard, you can target a Satellarknight monster in your graveyard and special summon it. This card is a crazy powerful card. It does require 3 Satellarknight monsters to Xyz summon in this card, but you can make it with the Dark Satellarknight, which this card is just really good to basically just giant Trunade everything back to the player's hand to be able to just stop the opponent. The only downside to this card is it does lock you into Satellarknight only for the rest of the turn, and the turn, or basically the entire turn that you have this card on the field, not the rest of the turn. But this card basically does lock you into that, which is again not that big of a deal because you have a lot of powerhouse plays that you can go into, like your copy of Satellarknight Deltaros, which Deltaros is a great card to put on the field with your copy of Trevere. You just play a single copy of this card because it has the ability that when this card has Xyz materials, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when you normal or special summon monsters. And then once per turn, you can detach a material from this card and then target a card on the field and destroy it. And if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, then you can special summon a Satellarknight monster from your hand or deck, which is really good that this card replaces itself. I really like to summon this card with Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer because it doesn't lock us into just Satellarknight monsters like Trevere does, but this card is just a really good card that has 2500 attack that's easy to make with our Dark Satellarknight monster, which we play 2 copies of. The Dark Satellarknight monster is really good in this deck because it has the ability that it takes 2 Satellarknights instead of 3, so you can make any of your Satellarknight monsters with just 2 materials instead of 3 materials, which is really good because this card has the ability that all face-up monsters on the field become dark, which helps you out with your copies of your Constellar Diamond. And it also has the ability that you can detach a material from this card and then discard a card to special summon from your X-Strike 1 light Satellarknight Xyz monster by using this face-up card as a material. And also you can Xyz summon for the monsters for the rest of the turn, and which is not that big of a deal because basically you're just making this to make Trevere, which is super good in this deck. We then play 2 copies of Satellarknight Constellar Diamond. This card is a really good 2 of in the deck. I used to play just a single copy of this card, but I've now played 2 copies of it with cards like Dragoon and Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer running around because it has a really crazy effect that during your main phase 2, you can Xyz summon this card using a Satellarknight Xyz monster that you control as Xyz material, except another copy of itself, and all the materials are transferred to that card or to this card. And then while this card has Xyz materials, neither player can send cards from their deck to the graveyard, and any card returned to the graveyard to the hand is banished instead, which is a really good effect to be able to just lock down the deck, and a really awesome effect. But it also negates dark monsters effects because it has the ability that during either player's turn, when an opponent's dark monster activates its effect, you can detach a material on this card and negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card, which is a really powerful effect on this card. We then play a single copy of Utopia Double. Utopia Double is really good because you can just detach a material from this, grab double or nothing from the deck, Xyz summon a Utopia on top of it. The Utopia comes out at 5,000, and then attack the opponent with this card, detach a material, drop double or nothing, and then it will go up to 10k to be able to basically OTK your opponent if they have a monster with 2,000 or less attack points on the field, which is really good for this card. We then play a single copy of Abyss Dweller to lock down the graveyards even more, which this card is just really good in the deck. 1 copy of Double A Zeus to be able to basically just board wipe the field, which is a crazy powerful card in this deck. Play a single copy of Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer because it's super easy to make in this deck, and it's just a really good card. Play a single copy of Artifact Dagda because we want to make sure that we get our copies of our Scythe on the field to be able to pop it with Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, and it's just a really powerful combo with these 2 cards, especially in this deck. And then finally a Verte Anaconda to be able to make Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer at any time by sending Fusion Destiny from the deck to the graveyard with the copy of Celestial and Dasher to be able to make Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer if you can Xyz summon into this card. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to be able to play with. I highly recommend that you guys have not played with Satellarknights before. They are super fun to be able to play with and are just really good cards. Basically really simple to learn as well because basically you have a Search, a Monster Reborn, a Special Summon from Hand, and a Foolish Burial between your Satellarknight monsters, which is pretty easy to understand as you play the deck, and they're just really consistent. So without further ado, guys, that's it for this one. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next to become part of Notification Squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.